fantasy is an RPG. The only one that I need. It's the RPG for me. Final Fantasy is all that I play. All other games are lame. It puts them all to shame. I only play games that are popular. I only buy the games the lag is easily to buy. That way I know I get good games for sure. I may have a shallow mind, but you can kiss my behind.
So we've done a lot of retrospectives on this show, and conventionally, be it movie, game, or TV, we like to go chronologically, like jumping from entry to entry and giving our thoughts on this. But when you have something that's kind of a behemoth, where even if you're just counting the main series alone, it spans over like a dozen entries, 20 if you count direct sequels, then it has to be a little more freeform. And when I asked Mark about things he wanted to talk about, he suggested several good ones, and one I felt had a lot of potential for discussion, that being certainly one of the most iconic video game franchises to come out of Japan, or even anywhere, Square Enix's Final Fantasy franchise. Something that started in the days of the NES and has continued and transitioned even primarily to Sony and Microsoft consoles, and probably for the foreseeable future still the de facto face of Japanese RPGs. So Mark, what was do you remember your first exposure to Final Fantasy, as well as like the first game that you properly played?
That would be 7.
That's a very common answer.
I did not start with the NES games. I didn't actually play the NES Final Fantasies until way later. When I was in middle school, they started putting them on Game Boy Advance.
Yes, I had the 4 and 6 ports for that. Did you play any of the NES ones back in their day too, either?
No, that's what I'm saying. I didn't play them till much later. Most notably, I also got the re-releases that were on. I'm trying to remember. They were on PlayStation 1.
Oh,
right? So
yeah, the Anthology and Chronicles.
Anthology and Chronicles. So I have them both.
Yeah, they packed in. I think it was 4 through 6 and Chrono Trigger.
It was one of them was 4 and Chrono Trigger.
Was the other 5 and 6? I had them both at one point.
Yeah, the other one was 5 and 6.
I think they also did 1 and 2 as well.
They did 1 and 2 as Origins, but it wasn't a good port.
And 3, the first time it got localized was the DS remake, I believe.
I didn't play any of the DS remakes, but yeah,
I read that was the first time 3 got a proper localization, which is surprising.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think
from 7 onward, like 7, I think that may always be the landmark for the series in terms of what an impact it has, what a following it still has, and the fact that every main entry in the series has been localized since then shows what a lasting, what a stamp it made for the series.
Well, people, I think generally everybody knows this these days, but the first Final Fantasy was going to be their last game.
Yes, so you know the meaning of that title, right?
Yeah, it was going to be their last game, so they called it Final Fantasy.
Squaresoft back then, because originally they were Squaresoft, and they merged with Enix, who was best known for Dragon Quest.
They didn't merge with Enix until the 2000s.
Yeah, no, it wasn't until the late PS2 era, I believe.
Yeah, at the time Enix was known for Dragon Quest.
Right.
But the games were originally on NES and Super Nintendo consoles.
1 through 6 were.
Yeah, 1 through 6. Sega had Phantasy Star.
Yeah, they're in-house RPG.
That's another good game. They also had Shining Force, but Phantasy Star is their main competitor to Final Fantasy, and I'd recommend those too, but they're very hard.
Yeah, I wasn't meant to try them.
And I think after 6, Square had some issue with Nintendo.
I can tell you that issue. I can tell you. Because I can. It's funny. They were between
weren't
the transition.
Weren't they planning on putting Final Fantasy on the new Nintendo console? But Nintendo was going with a cartridge.
Yes. Yeah. Let me explain. Basically, Sony. Final Fantasy was birthed on the NES and Super NES, and one thing I want to note is that as the series went going, I have to say from the 6th one onward, Square became really good at this series. I'd say even with the more divisive entries, they became consistently good at pushing the hardware's limits, graphically and presentation-wise.
Yeah.
6, I think, is still a gorgeous, some of the best pixel art you'll see in its environments and creatures. And 7, 7 was the series leap into 3D. And even then, it was technically kind of a hybrid because the characters were polygonal and the environments were pre-rendered, which means they weren't real-time polygons. But back then, that allowed for more detail because the system didn't have to use all its hardware to render this, and it's technical. And the problem was they were expecting Nintendo to be using. By this time, all consoles and hardware, like there's the advent of the CD-ROM, hardware was shifting from discs and carts to CDs because they had far more storage space. And Nintendo, it turned out, decided to stick with cartridges for the N64. They were like the lone holdout in that generation among the big players with the Saturn and the PS1. And Square was not willing to, rework 7 to work for N64. They went, well, we're jumping ship to your rival. And from that point forward, since then, from GameCube onward, Nintendo's still gotten some spin-offs, but we have not seen a mainline Final Fantasy on their systems since, outside of ports of the older ones.
Yeah, we've gotten ports.
And actually, from 13 onward, 13, its sequels, and 15 are also on Xbox consoles as well.
Yeah, I think the last exclusive Final Fantasy was 12.
Yeah, you're right, because the MMOs were on PC as well.
Not counting the MMOs because
they weren't exclusive anyway. They were on PC.
No, but yeah, you're right.
12 was the last Sony exclusive.
It was 12.
Yep.
FF12.
Which just got a remaster, actually. It's the first time I'm really playing it myself. And so, the first time I heard of this series, and nostalgia-wise, my favorite in it is still probably always going to be 6. And let me just get one confusing element out of the way. When the Nintendo games were first localized here, so they made 3 for the NES and 3 for the Super NES. The first one for the NES did get bring over here, but 2 and 3 didn't. So when they localized 4 for Super Nintendo, they renamed it in the US to Final Fantasy II, so as not to confuse gamers. And then, for whatever reason, they didn't bring out 5 over here. I think they might have considered it too difficult, which is also why they made Mystic Quest, which is basically Final Fantasy for babies. And when they localized 6, they called it 3, because there had not been a main entry in between in the US. But by the time they did 7, I think they had more confidence in the franchise, and they were like, we can deal with confusion, let's just make it 1-to-1 in terms of the numerical order going forward. And it was a risk that paid off, because the game was such a hit. They've been able to bring over not only release every other subsequent main entry later, but eventually re-release or localize everything that didn't get brought over the first time. And along with the vast majority of spin-offs. Because this thing has a huge fan base both in Japan and the US.
It's definitely much bigger here than...
I was going to say, I think Dragon Quest has still always been bigger in Japan.
Yeah, Dragon Quest is bigger in Japan.
Dragon Quest is such a social phenomenon. I think they had to, the government had to have them change the release date so they could only be put out on weekends, because so many people were taking off from work and school to play.
I did hear something about that.
That's crazy.
I've never actually been a big Dragon Quest guy.
I haven't played much of it, but
I own I think 6 or 7, whichever one was on PS2.
No, 8 was on PS2. I think 6 and 7 were PS1 or Super Nintendo or something.
You might be right.
I think that was another one that made the jump to Sony, and I don't know if it was for the same reasons. It's not.
No, I think a lot of RPGs eventually ended up on Sony.
Actually, I think the newer ones were on the 3DS and Wii U and Switch and stuff. I think they've come back. They just haven't been localized. Dragon Quest has never been able to blow up the same way over here. Kind of like another one that's huge in Japan but kind of small here is Monster Hunter.
Oh man, I love Monster. Well, did you say Monster Hunter or Monster Rancher?
Yeah, no, Hunter.
Oh, I thought you said Monster Rancher.
Sorry.
People don't remember that one. They had an anime.
I remember.
That had an anime in the 90s.
Yeah. I think that series is just done everywhere. Monster Hunter is still going, but
no, Monster Hunter's pretty popular here. You'd be surprised.
But it's a phenomenon in Japan. It's It's like their Call of Duty equivalent almost. It's a gargantuan thing, and it's not that here.
They love it. I remember when I went to college, I found out how many people loved Monster Hunter, and I was it's not for me.
Yeah, me too. When I was reviewing games for a website, I reviewed one of the 3DS entries, and I remember my biggest thing was, it's intentional, but the delay in pressing buttons and how long it takes your character to attack, and just the games are also paced very badly and slowly in the beginning. And I'm just like, this.
I mean, it's a grind, but I understand the appeal. But if someone was asking me to review a Monster Hunter game, I'd be like, I'm the wrong guy to do it.
I think I am too, but I never volunteer for anyone's after that. But
I just know I generally don't like those kinds of games.
Yeah,
but I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends who do.
There's different strokes, different folks. I don't technically think they're bad games, but I'm not, to be honest. But Final Fantasy. So I remember my first solid memory of this series wasn't actually playing one of the games. It was seeing the American commercial for 6. Did you ever see that? It was a claymation one with Mog and some monsters.
I did not.
I'll put clips of it.
The first commercial I ever saw for Final Fantasy was for 7.
Yeah, that had a big marketing push too. I remember that was a dramatic one. The Mog one was very misleading because it was claymation with a bunch of, it was him like auditioning. He was sitting at a desk auditioning monsters for the game, I guess. And he's like a gravelly Brooklyn voice. The monsters look like generic Western cartoons, and we just keep zapping them with thunder and going next. Like, it didn't tell you anything about the game. It didn't even show any footage. But that's how games were advertised back then. It was an odd time. But yeah, 7. I guess you could, like I said, you could see how much effort they put into properly marketing that game as a gamble. But it put JRPGs on the map for like the next solid decade. I would say they've fallen off in terms of popularity around the HD era, but they're still a thing along with Final Fantasy. And Final Fantasy has also been one that's, I mean, let's face it, it's a series that's become more divisive with its HD entries for various reasons.
Well, you know what it is all right. So I mean, it did very strong around the PlayStation era.
And PS2.
7 was a phenomenon.
Yes.
And then 8 came out. 8 is one of the more divisive titles.
It is, mainly because of its battle system and some of the characters.
I hate 8.
I get far into it. It's my least favorite of the PS1 ones for sure.
It is also my least favorite of the PS1 games. 9, I think, is one of the best.
9's awesome,
time.
yeah. 9 was and you could also see that as a
9's
risk
in my
back
top
then.
3.
You could also see that as a risk back then too, because they abandoned the cyberpunk, darker edge, realistic characters for like super deformed, more medieval.
Well, they were
fantasy.
going back. They were going back to basics.
Yeah, but it worked out. It worked out.
Yeah. So they were going back to basics, and it's actually remember. It's actually. I'm forgetting his name. I'm forgetting his name, and I have him on Facebook, like his actual face. The guy who created Final Fantasy.
Oh, Amano?
Sakaguchi, Hironobu Sakaguchi.
Yeah. Was that the last one he worked on?
No, he didn't work on it, but it's his favorite.
Oh, nice. I can see that.
It's his favorite
main Final Fantasy title.
Yeah, it's his favorite main Final Fantasy title. He didn't have anything to do with it, but he absolutely loves the aesthetic of it. He thinks it's the best of all of them.
Yeah.
Then 10 came out, and 10's characters and story aren't great. But man, that gameplay was so good.
I did not like Titus.
No, most people don't.
Its leads were the weakest characters. I thought, but I liked the supporting cast, and the actual story was awesome. 10's tied with 6 as my favorite. I think I adored it back in the day. Like, I remember this is not a joke. It was one of the first games I bought when I bought my PS2 in the summer of like 2002. And there was one time, like, I was just hooked on it. I was like, I remember I was playing one of the forest areas, and Patrick walked in and was like, "John, you want to come for dinner?" I just nonchalantly went, "I'm immersed in the world of Spira, Patrick."
Yeah, it was really engaging.
That was, because again, that was the first one on the PS2 hardware, so you got a big bump in graphical quality, first time with voice acting, better music quality, and just also revamped the battle system a bit. Like, that was, I almost feel like the most conventional battle system if you're talking turn-based JRPGs. The leveling system was a big shakeup with the Sphere Grid.
The Sphere Grid, it's okay.
Oh no, I liked it.
You haven't played 12, have you?
Only a little bit.
All right,
it's the remaster. They kind of redid that idea for leveling there too, but it also incorporated the job system in the international version.
Yeah, here's the thing: is like the Sphere Grid, you get the idea that it's like it's spread out. It's really not. It's actually much more linear than
right. Like, but there's still an element of customization to it that you don't get with conventional level up. Same with the 13 Crystarium or whatever. There's still a general set path, but you can kind of prioritize certain aspects, which I like.
Yeah, but it's not like 12, where 12 is like you could literally make every character whatever you want them to be.
Yeah, if you grind enough, everybody can be everything.
Even early on, like there's certain roles people are better in.
Mhm.
But man, when we get to 12, I got to talk about 12 because 12 is actually another one of my favorites, and it gets.
Well, let's go back and forth between what our favorites are. So I'll start with. Have you played 6?
Yeah, absolutely. 6 is one of my top 3.
Okay, it's I'd certainly cite it as the best of the Nintendo Pixel era.
I'd say it's up there. It's pretty close with 4, and 5 is really underrated.
I haven't played much of 5. I thought what I played of 4 was pretty good, but I think, like I said, 6 has a huge boost in presentation. Like both the character and environment sprites just are. Man, they really knew how to work with the Super NES hardware at that point, and the music too. I love that; it's so atmospheric. And one cool thing about 6 that I actually think would be harder for them to pull off nowadays is what a big cast it has of playable characters. And
you can do it.
Well, part of it's because you'd have to do voice acting for all of them. And the fact that that at certain points they can say who you have can say different things in situations like that can be a troublesome thing for developers budget wise because you have to do different animations and voices.
But it's not honestly.
They can still do it, but it's not as easy, and so you don't see it as often in the voiced era.
I'm a Persona fan. There's plenty of characters there.
True, but I'm just saying it's a general thing. But and also it makes it a very customizable. Because that also brought up on the Esper's system, which was kind of a precursor to the Materia system and other ideas of like being able to have a lot of options into what you want each character to be capable of, besides the base talents they come with that are unique to each other, and just a lot of fun characters. One of my favorite villains. I basically can sum up Kefka as anime Joker.
He's one of my favorite characters all time.
He's unorthodox as epic villains go because he is literally a clown.
Yep, pretty much.
And I was also bringing up, I kind of saw some shades of him, maybe not personality wise, but just appearance wise in characters like Kuja and Seymour, but they did not execute that as well as Kefka, I feel. Well,
Kuja, they tried to make him a little bit more sympathetic because it was like, oh, he could be what Zidane, like. Zidane could have been him.
He was also more serious in general. Seymour was a character who just never seemed to take much seriously, or like he relished in everything, but he wasn't a clown.
No.
I also remember people, and I can't hear it now. I always hear people say that when Seymour laughs, he sounds like Winnie the Pooh.
Seymour?
In 10.
Oh, God, yeah, he does have kind of a goofy voice, doesn't he?
Mainly the laugh, but he has a goofy design too. But, so yeah, 6 is... Do you have anything you want to say about 6?
I love Terra.
Yeah.
She's one of the best leads in Final Fantasy.
The first female lead, I believe.
Yes, she is the first female lead. And one of my favorite characters. I remember when I first played Dissidia, I played so much Terra.
Yeah, I need to play that. I'll definitely play the PS4 one, and I'll be probably maining Terra and Titus. maybe Zidane and some others too.
Oh, I played Zidane too. I loved them.
I like Zidane.
But yeah, 6 is one of the better games. I would say if you haven't, I'd say it's a good entry to start with if you can handle the 2D graphics. It always bothers me.
Let me just tell you, my old roommate is a huge Final Fantasy fan, but he says he cannot play the Nintendo era games because he can't get past the sprites, which is a big shame.
That's so frustrating to me. Because
it's kind of like when you hear people say they can't watch anime from the 80s or something.
Oh, I hate that because I'm a huge fan of.
And I say this as someone who does prefer the sleekness of modern anime. There's still really, really good stuff back then. That shouldn't be the sole reason you don't watch it.
No, of course.
Same with games. Actually, I mean, maybe for me it's also nostalgia because I grew up playing Super Nintendo and NES. But I mean, sometimes some people can't help it. But so 6 is good. Let's just go back and forth. Tell me one of your favorites of the main series.
Off the main series, we didn't really talk much about 9.
Let's talk about 9.
Let's talk about 9. I think Zidane was a breath of fresh air after fucking Cloud. Well, Cloud, funny enough, people think of Cloud as like this kind of edgy, brooding character. If anyone's played 7, he's really not. He's kind of a goof.
He's kind-hearted, but he's also he's also emo. And then Cloud, and then no, not as Cloud.
He's not that emo. Like he really isn't.
He's stern.
He's stern, but he has his goofy moments, like when he cross dresses.
Of course, I can't wait to see how the remake handles that.
It's gonna be great.
Well, but I think Squall was a step too far. That was pure emo, from what I remember.
Squall, Squall just seemed grumpy.
Yeah, it was hard to sympathize with someone who just was basically telling everybody to piss off most of the time. I'm pretty sure I know it's been memed, like the fact that a lot of Cloud and Squall's dialogue is just ... Yep. What do you think, Squall? ...
Fucking my entire party's a bunch of shits. I hate you all. That's basically 8. Like he just grumpy.
Oh, you didn't like anybody in it.
I guess Laguna would have been a great main character,
but he wasn't.
No, he wasn't. He was the. It's funny because doesn't the game play the whole thing where like, oh, he kind of was meant to be the main character, but.
Well, that reminds me of 12. You know about the development history of 12, right?
Well, I know it's Itsuno. I know it's Ivalice. The tactics people.
Have you played 12?
Yeah, I love 12. 12 is actually in my top 3.
I'm trying to look up when they first envisioned it. Vaughn was not going to be the main character. Hang on, I don't know much about it. Who's the older knight who's like in the opening scene, then joins your party later on?
Oh,
hang on, I'm looking at the characters now. It actually was a case of executive meddling, I believe.
It might have been. I think that's Bosch.
Yeah. I mean, I'll edit out this pause. I'm loading the wiki page. But yeah, Bosch, or that older knight character, that older warrior character, he was, him or another character like him, one of the main like older males in the party. Not the rogue, but yeah, the knight. When they started the work on the story of 12, they envisioned him as the main character.
I've heard that, but I've heard that as a rumor.
Yeah, I didn't verify it.
I didn't hear anything to verify it.
I think people point out that Vaughn, he is not as directly involved in the story as a lot of other protagonists, and that kind of leads credence to the rumor.
Yeah, but you know what? I actually really enjoyed that because...
When I played of it, he seems like a fine character. I guess just people can find that a little distracting, his irrelevance compared to other protagonists.
Well, no, it's different. Okay, here's the thing. Like, 10 had the issue where we have a main character who's not really the main character, but he tells everyone he's the main character, and
Titus
you hear that
ends up
line...
being more involved than you think at the beginning. My problem was that he was just... he was an annoying character.
Yeah, he was kind of insufferable, but he also, like, it's really Yuna's story.
Yes.
Like, he's kind of a side character in it, but he's always like, this is my story.
And by the end, it's kind of Arin's story is too. And like, Arin's still one of the most badass characters ever. He's just
Arin's great.
Just that design alone, you're like, I want to be this guy.
No, but like, I love Vaughn because Vaughn's not really important, but we're learning about the world through him.
He's the audience avatar in a way.
You know what? There's actually a lot of parallel between Final Fantasy XII and A New Hope. A lot of people think of he's Luke, except he's not like, he's not a Jedi. He's not special in any way. He's just the main character. He's the guy we learn about the world through.
Yeah, and get caught up in something bigger.
Exactly. Baltier and Fran are literally Han and Chewie.
Oh, I noticed that right away. Yeah, it's the Final Fantasy version of Han. What would Japan make Chewbacca into? A voluptuous bunny girl. Of course.
Yeah, but she's awesome.
I mean, I've heard she is. Yeah, I just need to play more.
She's great. I wish she was a better character to use because I would totally have her in my party.
That was me and some of the characters I liked most in 10 I never used, and I'm mainly talking Waka and Kamari. I never used those two or Riku. Riku more eye candy than a fun character. Though, no, I liked her more in the original than the sequel. She became such a bimbo in the sequel, and that annoyed me.
Who?
Riku.
Riku, yeah.
In X2, she is a dunce, and I was annoyed by that. I'm like, she wasn't a genius, but she wasn't this. And it also bummed me out because she's voiced by Tara Strong, who's a great actress. I know that would make Dave be like, oh, well, then she's the best character ever.
I mean, Riku's not great.
But she's okay in the first game, and then the sequel, she's insufferable. I liked
playing as her. She's a fucking beast, though. In 10.
That's something funny. I never used. In 10, I mainly used Titus, Arin, Lulu, and Yuna, and I barely ever used the other three.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, generally, I tend to switch people out once in a while, but I do have favorite parties and whatnot.
I mean, I would have to switch one out every now and then because it was a party of 3. It was 4, but I got used to those guys.
In 12, my favorites were Vaughn, Ash, and Baltier.
Mm-hmm. I'm too early in 12 to say my favorites. In 6, I certainly... I'll admit now, the only number 1 I've completely beaten is 10, just because I got so caught up in it. But
That's the case with most people.
Okay, I'm glad. But I played through a good portion of 6, 7, 9, 13, and 15. And some of 14.
I haven't played 15, but I'd like to.
It's really good, but that's another
I heard it's fun, but the story is like whatever.
Well, that's the thing is I can't really speak for it because people say like how the story starts out, but they say where it goes they're not fond of. And I'm actually going to try in the final published version of this episode get Chris to send a recording because in some of our earliest episodes we did our initial thoughts and he was gung-ho about the game and really, really enjoying it. But he has made Facebook posts and that by the end he was so sour that he says, I'm not going to blind purchase these games anymore.
That's just a good policy to have. Like blind purchasing games is always a bad idea.
Maybe it wasn't blind purchase, but it wasn't, or so maybe it was something like not get super excited automatically for a main Final Fantasy game anymore. I'm sorry, Chris, if I'm putting words in your mouth, but it was something along the lines of he's going to be a little more pessimistic about main entries. Like he really did a 180 on how he felt. And like I said, if he sends us an audio and thing about this, I'll put it in at this point. But I would recommend 15 from what I played of it, even though it is the biggest departure gameplay wise for the main series so far.
I heard it plays more like a Kingdom Hearts title.
Well, yeah, it was made by the same team who did the original 2 titles. That's part of the reason 3 took so long. The spin-offs and 3 have been made by a different team.
I'll check it out. It just looks like a lot of fun. It looks very Monster Hunter-y. To
some degree, yeah, because you can have subquests of going to kill monsters, but it does have a very unique control system where instead of mashing a button, you kind of hold one and then turn the analog stick in different directions. And that's probably my biggest hang-up about the gameplay is that I still have never quite got the hang of it. And one of the reasons I didn't finish it, also because it's super long. But they've been doing something interesting where they've been continuously doing substantial updates to the game, mostly for free. The main paid DLC has been side episodes about the other party characters where you play as them. But they're doing one on, and I think that update will be out by the time this episode's published. December 12th, they're going to make it so that you can switch between playing the other party members in the campaign, which is awesome.
Oh, that's cool.
That's a game changer.
I mean, that's good stuff. But I haven't played the game. I'm excited that Noctis is actually going to be in.
In what?
He's going to be in Tekken 7.
I meant to bring that up when you were talking about Tekken. Yeah, they're doing some interesting choices.
That surprised the hell out of a lot of people.
Yeah,
some people aren't very excited about it.
Well, yeah, that's the thing I want to talk about. There's been a lot of backlash for the HD era single-player Final Fantasies. 13 and its sequels debates on those games are super heated. And I'm actually been seeing...
13, look, 13, I'm just going to say it here. It's not even a debate. That is by far... 13 is by far the worst Final Fantasy ever put together with like any amount of money.
Okay, then you're not going to admit that I think it's a pretty good game.
You do.
You're not going to be happy with that? Yeah, I think it's alright.
Oh, wow. No,
maybe it helped that I played it long after it came out, so my hype had died down. I'm like, I still.
I didn't have any hype for it. Actually,
wow.
I played it, and it's just
I didn't like the linearity in some of the characters, but it was gorgeous. The battles were fun, and
I mean, you can make the argument. I can make the argument that 9 was slightly linear. Here's the thing about 13 I despise. One, the story is absolute trash.
I didn't like that it started in the middle of things. 15 does the same thing, and I'm like, I'd rather have a proper introduction to these guys.
Yeah, it starts in the middle of thing. It doesn't really explain the world to you
it's confusing. It's just gradual flashbacks. And 15 took a different approach where it was like, well, watch this anime short, watch this movie. I'm like, can't we just get that all in the game?
Yeah, I mean, that's a problem too, but the thing I heard 15 does well is the characters are pretty likable.
Oh, the interactions between those main 4, like, people complaining early on, like, where are the girls, where's more characters, but the camaraderie between these guys is genuine. It helps that they all have clearly defined traits and good voice acting. And actually, let me just go on a quick tangent because I wrote down it can be interesting looking up who some of the voice actors are since they started doing that. Because even though I don't like Titus as the character, do you know who his voice actor is?
Who? Oh, it's Ratchet. It's Ratchet.
Yes.
Let's give them all we got. I won't go so easy on you next time. A Class G Star Jumper? Is this for me?
Yes, and I love Ratchet and Clank. Also, he is the cartoon voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi in like Clone Wars Onward.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I actually saw an interview. Did you see Force Awakens?
I did.
When Rey has that vision, you hear a bunch of voices, and one of them is Ewan McGregor saying her name. When they weren't sure at first if they could get McGregor to record, they had that guy do it.
Oh, really? That's pretty cool.
Yeah. This is really random. One of my least favorite characters in 13 is Hope. This little kid who spends the whole game like, I want to kill Snow because I think my mom died because of him.
Oh, yeah. Fuck that kid.
She so obviously did not, you dumbass. But do you know who voiced him?
Who?
A kid named Vincent Martella, best known as Phineas.
When I was on Cocoon, I never dreamed a place like this could even exist.
Ferb, I know what we're gonna do today.
Oh, really?
From Phineas and Ferb.
Oh, well, he ended up getting that paycheck.
I mean, have you ever watched Phineas and Ferb?
Yeah. Yeah. I used to watch it all the time. I thought it was great.
It's not the only experience of that because have you played Kingdom Hearts?
Yeah.
Shion is Isabella.
What about you two? Did you guys go somewhere without me?
What you doing?
Shion?
Yeah.
How far into Kingdom Hearts are we going here? Because
Coded.
Huh?
I mean, I know 3582 days.
I played 1 and I played 2, and I've
dang it. Okay, she was in one of the DS games, but okay. But the point is, another Phineas and Ferb actor is in Square Enix. Joke ruin. Okay, no, this one blew my mind. I know you said you don't play Overwatch, but you're familiar with the characters.
Yeah.
You know who Gladiolus is in 15, right?
Gladiolus?
The buff one. The muscle.
The big, what do you like in your noodles, man?
I want to say two things. One, I really like him because they don't do the stereotypical thing of making him a dumbass. He's actually a very sensible guy who also happens to be the strongest. Two, actually, three things. Two, Chris has admitted in the past he is a straight man, but Gladiolus is a real hunk, and he and his wife nicknamed Gladiolus Uncle Daddy Boyfriend.
I know he's very popular with the...
Yeah. Three, he is voiced by Junkrat.
Really?
Isn't that weird?
That
guy
is
has range. Junkrat is a high-pitched, hey, mate, and Gladiolus is, I can't do it, it's deep.
Oh, don't mind me, I was just taking 5. Definitely not thinking about blowing something up.
Then, if you take something already delicious like cup noodles and add in the finest, freshest ingredients, what do you get?
That is
talented guy.
Surprising.
Talented guy, Chris Parson. And another one, less surprising because it's pretty much the same voice. The voice of Lightning is, oh god, why am I blanking on her name? The main, have you played Mass Effect?
Yes.
What's the...
Jennifer something...
No, it's not Jennifer. Her name's Ali Hillis. Liara.
The meeting was less than ideal. At least the Council can't deny the Reapers exist. All because I turned my back on God.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Liara's Lightning.
Oh, wow. I didn't know.
Also Palutena in Kid Icarus.
I mean, that's cool, but it's just, it doesn't save the game for me.
I'm not saying this was just a list of going through fun voice actor things, and I was wrapping it up there.
No, I'm surprised at the Junkrat one.
That's the craziest one. I think Hope's crazy too because you couldn't tell that was Phineas. Titus, you could tell. That's his.
You could tell if you listen
regular
closely.
Voice.
You could tell if you listen closely. One of my favorites is actually Baltairs, who he hasn't done too much, I don't think.
The 12 cast hasn't done as much compared to other people. It's interesting.
No, but
like
that game
Fran's
kind
voice
of like,
is like 3 other credits.
That game was like right in the middle of the anime boom. You know,
12 was?
12 came out in like 2006, just as the anime boom was dying out.
Oh, so no, 10 was in the middle of it.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Well, yeah, tail end. So 2006 was like right when it was at its peak.
Well, it's also interesting because sometimes they get anime actors. Like I remember reading one of the bit characters in 10 was the voice of Tenchi and Tenchi Muyo, and I flipped out because I loved that as a kid. But then you also get ones who primarily do cartoons. We mentioned Tara Strong and Waka and Kamari were John DiMaggio. Bender, the dog. He doesn't do Japanese stuff traditionally, but that was an exception.
Everyone, go, go, go! Shut up, baby, I know it!
I know. I'll always remember. And he sounds nothing like himself there either.
Waka sounds a little Bender-ish, just not as raspy and with an accent. He has that guy just kind of has a gruff voice by nature, so if you know it's him, it's possible to pick him out. And Tara Strong, on the other hand, she can be something of a chameleon. Like, I always like to tell people, oh, yeah, she's Raven and she's Bubbles. And they're like, I'm sorry, what?
Yep.
So I'm done talking about the voice actors. Tell me another one of your favorite games.
Well, I do want to go into what my bigger problem with 13 is.
Go for it.
You don't really play the game as much as you would think.
Yeah, because the battles are partially automated.
Yeah, I hate that. I hate that.
I can see
There's nothing I hate. There's nothing I hate more in any kind of game, especially an RPG, mind you, than when the games play themselves and everything. You don't really have agency as a player to do what you want.
12 and 15 kind of do the same thing in that your partners are AI controlled. You can only do one character at a time.
But 12 circumvents it in a much better way than something like 13 does, because you're still controlling one character. That's fine because it's real time, right? But you have the Gambit system in 12, which lets you basically program your party to play however you want.
And you can swap between them, right?
Exactly. You can swap between them.
Yeah.
You can literally switch to another party member and use their attacks.
15 has kind of a similar fashion, and now they're about to make it where you can just swap, which would have been nice if they did from day one. But
the other thing is, in 13, all your characters are kind of locked into how they play.
Outside of the Crystarium customization and progression.
But the customization system is
you didn't
really...
like the... they kind of had a version of the job switching thing with the paradigm shift. I'm guessing that wasn't your thing.
It wasn't very well implemented, I don't think. Whereas in 12, it's like, oh, here's Baltair. You know what I made mine? I made my Baltair a monk. I literally made him just a monk, which is not what people would normally make him. But I was like, fuck it, I'll give him a staff and I'll give him like monk abilities and whatnot, and we'll just go with that. You can make your characters whatever the hell you wanted to in 12. There's, right now Xenoblade is a big series with Nintendo. Yeah. And one of the things I love about that series is you can organize your party however way you like. You can map their skills however way you like. In Chronicles, the characters are mapped like. Their abilities are locked into certain things, but you can still customize those abilities. In Chronicles X, you can make your main character one of like, I think it's like one of 6 final party, one of 6 final, what am I saying parties? One of 6 final classes, and then when you master all of them, you can mix and match them. It just depends on like which weapons you've mastered and whatnot. So for me, 13, it was like, man, 12 gave me so much agency, so much ability to play the way I wanted and do what I wanted with the characters, and then 13 just took all of that away, and that's the main reason I really couldn't stand it, because
it's too dumbed down.
It's dumbed down. It plays itself. It doesn't really give me the opportunity to play the game the way I wanted to.
All valid reasons.
Comparatively, Xenoblade Chronicles X, I literally broke that game to the point where my character is always in overdrive mode, which is basically that variant of Limit Break.
Do you have a Switch?
No, I don't. I have a Wii U.
Okay, my brother has.
That's why I haven't. That's why I haven't.
Has 2. It's actually his first entry in this series, but he says he's loving it, and I'm hoping to get it for Christmas. Funny thing, he was unaware of the series until Shulk was in Smash, and I remember I texted him that announcement, and his response is, "What the fuck's a Xenoblade?"
Yeah, a lot of people were like that. I knew about it, but I'm a big JRPG guy.
I think the only time I have not been aware of who newcomers were in Melee with the Ice Climbers, because that's an old obscure thing, and Marth and Roy, because Fire Emblem was not here yet. I think ever since then, like I guess it kind of counts when I saw Ike. I didn't know him, but I wasn't able to recognize him by like name or anything. But I saw him and that's a Fire Emblem guy, because his games were localized.
Yeah, I could see it.
Mm-hmm. We just keep going back and forth. I'm trying to think if there's any more. We talked 10. Let's talk 10 a little more. We mainly talked about some of the characters.
I think 10 is one of the best entries to start with.
Agreed. The
story has some problems for me, but I think
it's the gameplay is both straightforward enough, but still complex enough if you want to get into it. Especially if you're a completionist going for all the weapons and all that kind of stuff. The fact that they added so many additional challenges for like the Ultima weapons and stuff in later games.
Yeah, I'm a fan of it. I liked it a lot when I played it. I didn't love it, but I'd been playing Final Fantasy up to the point. But it was a very nice transition from PlayStation to PlayStation 2.
Yeah,
presentation
wise, they've always been generally good. Like discussed how flawed 13 is from a play perspective, but I still think that's the best looking game of its generation when it comes to like the character models. Like that could pass for a PS4 game almost.
But I come from that like PlayStation era where it's like I come from the old graphics, right?
Yeah.
So it's funny. I hear a lot of people talk today like, "Oh, how are the graphics? How are the graphics?" I genuinely don't care.
I care
I'm
if
the
they
kind of
look
person,
ugly or dated, but not so much.
I don't. No, but that's the thing. I don't. Right. So like, I literally can go back. I literally have gone back 2 years ago. I went back and just played a bunch of old RPGs that I just never got around to.
On
right?
like, what, PS1?
PS1. I emulated Panzer Dragoon Saga because I'm not paying $1,000 for that.
How was that game, by the way?
Oh, it's amazing.
That's what I've heard. I've only played the original and Orta, but I'm curious about Saga. Orta is still my favorite exclusive for the original.
Well, Saga is not like the other ones.
No, I know. It's an RPG.
Yeah, and it's one of the most amazing games I've ever played, and there's never going to be another game like it.
Yeah, I've always heard hush stories about it. But, so yeah, you playing some old RPGs.
Yeah, and I went back, I played that, I replayed Chrono Cross, which is one of my all-time favorite RPGs. That
never played it, but I love Chrono Trigger.
It got a lot of hate, because a lot of people expected another Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, and, it's a deviation.
It's a deviation, but to me, it's better. It's way better, and it's another one of those games because you have like I think 45 potential party members you can recruit.
It's a huge cast.
Exactly. So as a result of that, look, like I said, anytime a game lets me do what I want,
you like that.
I love that. That's what I love most in games.
You might like 15 then, just by the nature of it being open world. There's a lot of just go fuck around and do what you feel like. Like, are you a fan of the open world formula?
I'm a fan of the open world formula in certain instances.
Okay.
So I actually, every time I look at 15, I think to myself, man, I think I'd like this game a lot.
It's not as vehicle-oriented as others. Like, if you're in a vehicle, for the most part, you have to stick to the roads. You can rent chocobos, but, it's still not at the same... it's a lot about, in the same way as Breath of the Wild, about exploration and seeing what side quests.
I have not played Breath of the Wild. Eventually, I figure I'm going to get a Switch just because my girlfriend really wants to play Odyssey.
Both great games.
Yeah, she wants to play Odyssey. She doesn't really want to play Breath of the Wild.
They're very different games.
She doesn't want to play it because it reminds her a lot of Skyrim, and she doesn't like Skyrim.
Oh, that's a shame.
Well, I mean, that's kind of where they went with it. They kind of made it more of a...
It's still... There's still a lot of Zelda principles at its core. It's open world, but it's still not Skyrim. But anyway.
I know, but, we've seen enough reviews where it's like...
Comparisons.
There's this guy on YouTube called Super Bunny Hop who does great videos on just video games in general, not just reviews, but like talking about the industry and things like that and different trends. I strongly suggest you check him out. And anyone listening, I love his videos. And he did a video about about Zelda Breath of the Wild where he talked about kind of the grinding and how repetitive certain aspects of it were. But that's kind of a side effect of having the open world format, like how I think the dungeons under these little like temples or whatever you have to do throughout the game.
Do you mean the shrines?
I think so. I think the
shrines are like mini dungeons, like 1 or 2 rooms worth of puzzles, and there's tons of them, and then like 4 or 5 main dungeons.
Yeah, but it's like the same setup for each of them, and you always know when you're at one.
Yeah.
That's what he. Yeah, that's what he's talking about, and they all kind of like run the same. I think he said
aesthetically they're the same thing.
Yeah,
and my biggest complaint, which we actually did an episode of my launch impressions, I feel like the story is de-emphasized and compared to past 3D Zeldas, and that's my main.
Yeah, I heard about that too. It's
a great game, otherwise, though. I still heavily recommend it.
I'll play it at some point, but she's way more interested in
Odyssey.
Mario Odyssey.
Yeah, so was I. Odyssey. Are you interested in it at all? Like, do you like Mario?
I'm interested in playing it just because and it's funny. I'm not a huge Mario guy, really.
Okay, I'll say it right now. It's the best main game since Galaxy 2.
Yeah, I've heard. I've heard. I actually have not played. I think it's the first one since Galaxy 2.
No, 3D World was.
Do people really count those?
Yeah. Just 3D World, not the new Super Mario Brothers.
All right. 3D World. I guess I never really thought of it as one.
It was the closest thing to Wii U got.
Yeah, but it's the Wii U. I'm saying this as someone who owned a Wii U. It's like,
well, it's like
Nintendo
in between.
doesn't give
I feel like it's in between the grander things. We got weird experiments because I thought Sunshine was a weird experiment.
Oh, I love Sunshine.
A lot of people do. That's my least favorite of the main Mario games.
Really, I adore that game.
A lot of people do. I'm not, and I won't fault you for it.
I adore it, but yeah, it's one of the hardest ones.
Absolutely, but also one like. We shouldn't make this a Mario episode, but I endorse Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey. So what was the last game we were talking about? I know we talked about the open world in 15. Okay. I feel like we haven't
talked about the MMOs.
Okay, let's talk about that. Then I feel like, well, actually, no. Let's look at the elephant in the room. Let's talk about 7, like the most famous one ever. Your first one.
It's not bad. It's a little overrated.
Okay. We're actually in the same camp. Actually, I was really late.
At the time it was great. But
yeah.
It hasn't aged all that great. It does Here's the thing about it. It kind of just does everything right, and that's it. That's okay. It kind of just does everything right. It has a good party. It has a good story.
Yeah, I like the cast.
It has a good cast. It has really good gameplay, which is part of the reason I hated 8 so much.
Yeah, good music and atmosphere too. Even just the Midgar stuff alone.
Yeah, but it's just a lot of it's nostalgia. I'd rather have a remake of 9.
Maybe someday. I want a 6 remake.
A 6 remake?
It's still my favorite.
I don't think that's gonna happen. But
no, I'm not saying I think it will. I'm just saying that's the one I would do if I had the choice.
I'd get a remake. Well, we just got the re-release of 12, and I think 12 is new enough that you don't need to remake it.
No, 10 and 12 got remasters, and that's probably all they need. 6, like the old, I'd be curious to see one of those NES, Super NES ones get like an HD big budget treatment. But the closest the closest we got is the 4 remake, which basically it was for the DS, so it looked like a PS1 version basically, and that's not enough for me.
Yeah, but it's like 7 is just such a huge deal to a lot of people. So
it's
that
one of
was
the only
always
ones that justifies that big a budget and attempt. And even then, I'm wondering how that's going to fare with fans because they're switching to real time.
I mean, a lot of the fans went on to Kingdom Hearts, so
I know, but there's still. Actually, we can also touch on some of the. This is a series that, like most video games, has not fared well for the most part when you adapt it to other media. But the one of the 3 CG movies we've gotten, Advent Children is the only one I legit enjoy. And I actually did an episode about it on Generation Animation with Tyler and Dave back in the day. And I bring it up because I think Dave actually said he was hoping. Either he hoped that it was still turn-based or that you could have an option to have it without voices, just for the old school.
Oh,
wow. He adores 7.
Just play the original. Funny enough, I've never talked about Final Fantasy with Dave, and I would love to.
I know 7 is he loves it to pieces. And I know some of the others. I think he's a fan of some of the others too, but I have not asked him beyond 7. I know that he only played the first Kingdom Hearts, but he enjoyed it.
I played Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2.
I think that's Tyler too. He only played the first one and 2, and I've played everything but the DS games. I'm a huge fan of it, the series. Even though the only ones I'd tell people you should play are 1, 2, and the PSP and 3DS ones.
I'm good with 2 because I liked 1 at the time. I do think it's aged kind of badly.
Yeah, 1's very primitive compared to everything that came afterward. Gameplay-wise.
No, but even then, it's like
I still say it has the best story of the individual games.
Oh, what 1?
Yeah,
probably because
everybody's complaint is how convoluted it's gotten.
Absolutely. The entire story is a mess.
Yeah,
now.
And they're saying 3 is going to wrap that up, so after that they can kind of start fresh.
I mean, even then, if I go back, the story's not all that great. But I enjoyed the game.
I think it helps that I love Disney, so it's just kind of cool to go through each world. And it's just got a sweet-natured story. And I think it's also funny that, just a side thing, I now associate that main Mickey Disney crew with Kingdom Hearts, like from my teenage years.
Would you recommend Chain of Memories?
No.
Yeah, I had it.
Yeah, I would not recommend that or the remake. I wouldn't recommend. I played a little bit of Coded, which is the 1DS one. Didn't like it. Apparently, Days, which is the one I was named up in that character for, was not good either. Basically, if it's a Nintendo one, unless it's the 3DS one, I'd skip it and just look up the cutscenes or a summary.
Yeah. If you care about the story, that's the main thing to do.
If you
I
care
don't know.
about the story,
I feel,
Chain of Memories is the only one that actually seems kind of important of those Nintendo ones. Oh no, the 3DS one too, but it's a good game.
I mean, Chain of Memories literally goes straight into 2.
Yeah, you don't like as people say, like if you skip that, you have no idea what the fuck is up with Sora at the beginning of 2, or some of the characters they get introduced, what their deal is.
Oh man, I remember when 2 started, and I was like, "Yo, Roxas, way fun to use," and then he gets taken away from you.
No, Roxas' section was not fun.
I liked it.
Okay.
No, I don't mean like the tedial menial tasks of like collecting.
The story part of it is cool because it's like this.
No, I'm talking about his actual the way he fights compared to the way he fights compared to Sora.
Okay, I don't remember that much of a difference, but
that's how I felt. It has been a while though. I do remember that my problem with 2 was extremely easy. I rented the game and I beat it within like a week.
The default difficulty 1 is a lot harder than everything that followed.
No, but I also genuinely 100%ed it, and that shocked me because I never try that.
I mean, they have harder difficulties. Did you beat it on that or?
Well, no, I mean also just finding the stuff.
Okay,
and getting like
even on normal, I really suck when it comes to those optional super hard bosses like Sephiroth. Like
by that point, I don't know what it was. I struggled a lot in the first Kingdom Hearts.
The first one's the hardest.
Yeah, I struggled a lot with the optional bosses there. With the ones in 2, I didn't really have an issue.
Okay,
to be entirely honest.
So actually, you mentioned. So I guess you've said your piece on 7. There's not as much to say as I thought. You know, I'm in the same thing. I certainly recommend it, but I think I played it too late to be, blown away by it. But it's a good.
It's one of those things. You see, here's the thing. Like, I grew up with NES and Super Nintendo, but if you ask me to go back and play a fucking Atari game.
Oh, you know what? I can compare.
Doing that.
Yeah, I can't do pre-NES. I don't even like live NES games. I'm more 16-bit onward. But also, my thing, I think I've heard a lot of reviewers when they play like one of the re-releases of Ocarina of Time, and they go, "What's the big deal with this game?" And that's one of my favorite games ever, and I was obsessed with it. It came out, and there's just some games like that where you just had to be in the moment to appreciate it as much as some people do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I feel like a lot of the games from the SNES era do hold up.
Oh, the N64 and PS1 era is one of the worst dated of a lot of games just because it was the first fully 3D generation and there was a lot of learning.
I don't think it's dated. I really don't think a lot of the good stuff there is dated.
On the PS1?
Graphically it doesn't look the way a lot of the stuff today does.
I mean like the ones that aren't like the cream of the crop. Like I feel like an average SNES game can work a lot. An average SNES game can work a lot better in this day than an average PS1 game. That's all I'm saying. Like,
it depends. There's a lot of shovelware there too.
Like even famous series. Like I loved Earthworm Jim on the Super Nintendo. Then I played that 3D one, and that was bad.
Yeah, that happens.
Some series developers just didn't get the hang of it their first time around.
Hey, back.
What?
Bubsy's back.
Yeah, and I'm hearing that game's like an hour long and $30 and mediocre. Surprise, surprise.
It's Bubsy. He's back.
I only ever played the first one. 3D looks. That's a textbook example.
Okay. So one of the first games I ever rented was Bubsy 3D.
Jesus Christ, man.
Oh yeah.
How was that?
And I was like, I was like 7 years old, 8 years old, and I just remember playing it and being like, what the fuck do I do?
That game does not look like a released game. Like there are no textures.
And it looked bad. At that time, it looked bad.
It looked bad. It would have looked bad in 1990. It would have looked bad on a Super Nintendo. It's man.
Yep.
And the funny thing is, I feel bad for its developers because it took them a while to make it, and they were like trying to pioneer 3D platformers. And like a few months before it was set to release, they went to a trade show, saw Mario 64, and they knew right then and there, guys, we're fucked.
Yep.
And actually, they weren't fucked because they went on to make the Siphon Filter games, the Uncharted Vita game, and now they're making that Days Gone zombie game.
Yeah, I know they ended up going on to make on Siphon.
Yeah, they survived, so good for them. But learning experience. But I guess that wraps up our 7 talk. It shows how invested we are in 7 compared to how much we've talked about other things.
It's just, it's funny because people, you always hear the 7 talk, and there's always the one guy who's like, I think it's overrated, and then everyone jumps on their throat.
Man, I don't even know if I can say it's overrated because I wasn't there.
I was there.
Okay.
And at the time, yeah, it was cool to have it in 3D, but later games did it better, and really, it was a good game. It was just a good game at the time.
It is a good game. But like even that generation, 9 was like peak PS1 Final Fantasy, I'd say.
Well, the funny thing is like I played a lot of the stuff from that generation, right? So 7 was the better thing at the time. Within that time frame, Panzer Dragoon Saga came out, and I think Panzer Dragoon Saga while it's a much shorter game,
it's better.
Oh my God, there's so much ambition that went into the way the game plays,
and nobody played it.
Well, it was on the Saturn, and exactly. Unfortunately, which is tragic because I think the Saturn was great and there's a lot of good stuff on there.
Yeah, but it didn't last.
I maintain to this day that the Dreamcast is the greatest console ever made, but
it has some good games. Yeah,
it's to me that's the one. That's the MVP. I love my Dreamcast. It's a
toss up between Super NES and PS2, but it does kind of feel like this is just a small tangent. Then we can move on to the multiplayer and whatever else you want to talk about. Something I do feel that happened once the HG generation started, because I know that because of that leaping graphical detail, costs went way up, and you start seeing a lot less experimental, quirky games from big developers. Like that's now the domain of the indie dev, and that's one of my favorite things about the PS2 generation and that system.
Well, in particular. Now Steam is kind of saving that now.
And the indie scene for consoles too, because there's a lot of cross-pollination there. But I mean, like, just some of my favorite games.
I'm so down to play Cuphead. I
just bought it yesterday and started playing it. It's fun.
Oh man, I love shmups though. I really do.
I mean, I'm sold on the aesthetic. Just what a genious idea, and they pull off really well.
The aesthetic is great too. But I also happen to be someone who loves playing shoot 'em ups.
Okay, I don't play that many, but from what I've seen so far, it's pretty good. Homage.
It's Ikaruga. We got some Disney in our Ikaruga. No, not even. It's Fleischer Brothers stuff.
Yeah. It's old school.
Yeah,
Fleischer.
We got Fleischer Brothers in our Ikaruga.
Yeah.
And hell yeah, I want to play that.
But okay, so you said we can talk briefly on the MMOs, because I know you said you actually aren't into MMOs much. I'm not in general too, and I never played 11, other than the NES games. I think it's the one numbered thing I've literally never touched. But back when I was doing reviews for a website, they sent me the PS4 version of 14.
On release?
Yeah. I'm speaking the Realm Reborn version. The original Disastrous version never got to PS4. By the time they put it there, they'd revamped it, and that's actually
right.
That's kind of a miracle of gaming. The fact that the original was such a clusterfuck, and when they reworked it, it's been a success. And
yeah, I mean that's what happens these days now, though.
It doesn't always work out, though, even when they try. But this was a case of them actually learning and nailing it the second time, and that's probably the best experience I've had with a game of that type. It's now my big complaint with it compared to other Final Fantasies is that the story just kind of sucks. Barely any of it is voiced, and the characters and plot are mostly forgettable. There's not much that happens that's of impact. Because that's something I always noticed, even in the Super NES games. Those can be very dark and heavy plots. A lot of real tragedy and pathos for its characters, and that's part of what endears people to them. This in 14, like, your character doesn't even talk, so whatever.
I mean, it's an MMO.
That's I know. It still feels like the fact that it's. I do kind of feel like they should not have used the main numerals for those games. Should have been Final Fantasy Online and Final Fantasy Online 2 or something like that. But they did, and to be fair, A Realm Reborn, the current iteration of 14 is a very good game, and it has some very smart. I think the coolest thing it does that I don't hear about happening in other MMOs is that, one, you got a lot of character customization options and appearance and stuff, a lot of different species, both genders, and a lot of different those features. But the cool thing is, even though you start out, you choose one class, you can technically have your character become all classes. Are you aware of this?
I am not.
It's most MMOs. Once you choose a class, you're stuck.
You're stuck.
This
right?
is you stay with one for a while, but as you open up each main area, there are 3 different main hubs, and depending on your class, you start in one of them and get different introductory cutscenes and stuff. But they each have guilds for like a dozen different classes, and you can go there. You get your first class. You get your first subquest for them, and you get a weapon. And basically, whatever weapon you equip, you get a different armor set for that you can save, and you'll automatically switch to that, and it has its own independent level from like 1 to 50 or 1 to 100 or whatever. And it's basically like starting fresh stat-wise, but you're still the same character in the same campaign. It's really cool.
That is pretty neat. Because it's like a new game. It's like you're giving yourself kind of a new game plus kind of thing.
It's like unlocking every career path without having to start the game from scratch. Like, it extends the replay value tremendously. And yeah, there's still a lot of grinding, but the incentive of getting different play experiences because of how differently these classes can play that's really cool. And
that is.
I hope more.
I wish I cared more about MMOs.
Yeah. I haven't played it much lately. I never even beat the main campaign, and now they're like, what, 2 or 3 expansions, and I might get back to it at some point because there was something addicting about it, even if I didn't care about the story. Just progression wise, they were pretty satisfying. They do the cool thing of seasonal events, cross promotional events. Because I know you'd love the fact that Lightning showed up in the game. You could get her in snow outfits. I think Cloud showed up too, actually, or his outfits did. They've obviously done a bunch of like they also have mounts, some of which are, I think when you beat the main campaign, you get magic tech armor from 6, which I'm dying to have. I think there's like a fat chocobo and stuff. Obviously, you can raise your chocobo to be an AI partner, and you can like choose. You have to give it different classes and gear and cosmetics. Like the depth and amount of stuff to do is. They also added a casino. They put in the Triple Triad card game, which I think was from 9. Was it from 9?
There's an app for Triple Triad.
No, I didn't. I'm actually not that into it, but I think it's a cool touch for anybody who did like it.
Okay, so I don't know if you know this. Do you watch The Best Friends?
Super Best Friends?
Yeah.
Occasionally, but yeah.
Okay, so they did they put out a Best Friends play Final Fantasy VIII, right?
Okay.
So they played through the whole game. They literally cut out every moment of the game that wasn't them playing Triple Triad. And if you just watch that video, like they go through the whole fucking game, right?
Yeah.
But it's like 45 minutes long, and it's just them going around challenging people to play Triple Triad.
That's fantastic. Like, I normally don't like Let's Players, but their sense of humor is just so phenomenal.
Yeah, that's the whole. I think that's the whole like appeal.
That's their hook, is that they just know how to play off each other and the game, and it's best when you watch like I wish they did more of the compilations where they just add together those best stuff like they do for Machinima, especially when they play ridiculous games. And I'm so happy they exposed Metal Wolf Chaos to the world because I think that may legit be the funniest game ever made.
Oh yeah, let's party.
Suck on my missile punch. Amazing.
Let's party.
Richard! From the makers of Dark Souls.
Yep, from the makers of Dark Souls.
It is a fucking crime we never got that game over here, because that's the most American thing I've ever seen.
It is, and obviously it would come from Japan, wouldn't it?
Of course it would. Man, so is there anything else you want to talk about with Final Fantasy in general? Any other entries or spin-offs or aspects?
I mean, I think we covered most of Final Fantasy. I did want to say earlier when we were talking about when I was talking about like the PS1 generation, how you were talking about games took more risks then.
PS2 as well. We feel once HD started with PS3 and 360, we still had some experiments, but that's also because it was SD and cheaper.
Yeah, it was. But I wanted to bring up. I'm a big fan of Xenogears.
Okay.
Yeah. And Xenogears. So here's the story about Xenogears. Xenogears was actually an early version of Final Fantasy VII.
Really?
Yes. Eventually they went with 7 instead, and then they're like, all right, well, we'll make Xenogears instead.
Its own thing.
We'll make it its own thing. We'll just do it its own thing. And here's the thing: the first disc is a completed, finished version. The second disc is a lot of cutscenes and not that much gameplay, mostly boss fights.
Oh,
the reason for that, it wasn't rushed. During its development, they funneled money. Squaresoft funneled money out of the development of Xenogears to make Final Fantasy VIII.
God damn it.
So, as a result, they had to cut corners on the second disc, and it's still, to me, it's still a 10 out of 10 game.
Wow.
But I'm always going to hate Final Fantasy VIII for that.
Among other reasons.
Yeah, among other reasons. But I will say, Final Fantasy in the PS1 era was great, but there's plenty of other RPGs that Squaresoft made at the time. It was Squaresoft. I'd strongly recommend Xenogears, and a lot of people haven't played it.
No.
And I do want to tell people, check out Xenogears.
That guy who created it has, like, all the other Xeno games, both Saga and Blade, those are his, right? He's the Monolith Soft head, or something like that.
Yeah.
Even though those 3 series aren't related to each other, that's just his signature.
They're not related to each other. They're related in they're related like spiritual successor thing.
Some mechanics, but they're each owned by different companies.
Well, here's the thing: it's not like just one guy. Monolith Soft are actually a lot of. Here's the thing: Monolith Soft, a lot of those guys. A lot of those guys came from
Xenogears?
No, actually, Chrono Team.
Okay, Cross or
Trigger.
Oh,
yeah, straight up Trigger. So a lot of them came straight from Trigger, and then they went on to do Cross. Cross came after Xenogears, but Xenogears has a lot of the same that Cross does. And they both gameplay elements like battle system. They both have kind of like a combo based system.
Interesting.
I would say check out gameplay for Xenogears and Chrono Cross, and you'll see how it is. I think Cross does a lot of things that I wish more RPGs did. For example, Chrono Cross does not have a level system. Yeah, it doesn't have a level system. Your level increases as you pass through the game. What you do get is bonuses to your attack and defense if you if you fight enemies and whatnot. Yeah. So you are encouraged to you're not encouraged to run away.
This is a weird comparison to make, but some recent Nintendo RPGs that they publish have been that way as well. The Mario Rabbids game, your characters don't level up; you get stuff to get new weapons and abilities.
Yeah,
and
Splatoon.
That game. Oh wait, no, I was going to say Miitopia, but that was which is actually a fun little diversion. But that's more like just the weapons than I guess that's kind of conventional. But Mario Rabbids is like we aren't going to do conventional levels. It's kind of interesting to see when people branch out for that. So I just want to see if you have like any other random memories about like reactions to the games. Because I remember one, I was so distraught when they first revealed 10-2.
10-2?
Yeah, it was just such
10-2 is not. Look, I'm just gonna say it. 10-2 is not a bad game.
Gameplay wise, it's fine, but just that shift in tone and style and focus, I wasn't happy with it. Like to go from a very somber story to almost like anime Charlie's Angels.
I'll be honest with you. I actually thought that was kind of hilarious.
It kind of was at points, but like I said, it also meant 3 characters. It wasn't as strong. Yuna was kind of boring. Like I said, talked about how they made Riku really stupid, and Pain was just Lulu but not, and it was just I generally liked a lot of that cast, and all the characters I really liked weren't really there anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that. My thing was I never really got too invested in Final Fantasy X's story, so I kind of took...
Okay. Yeah,
like, the moment you start Final Fantasy X-2, you're just like, okay, well, that's the kind of game this is.
Yeah, it's a pop number infiltration, and it's insane. But I think it also was the fact that it was the first time I felt kind of when people get upset about an unnecessary movie sequel to something they love, I felt that as well.
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you like
really fine, and there was not some sort of what comes next. It's like, no, you stop here. It also undoes the end.
It does. You got the fake Titus.
No, he comes back.
Yeah, he comes back, but it's like then you have the fake one who I think was the villain.
There was like I never beat it. I just know that she's having visions of like another pair that are like them, but at the end of the game they actually do resurrect Titus, the real one. And I'm like, well, that makes the first one's sad ending moot. Thanks.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm trying to think if there are any other... Are there any spin-offs in the game you recommend? Because I know you like Tactics.
Tactics is good. Well, 12 is based in Ivalice.
Yes, which came from Tactics Advance.
Yeah, it came from Tactics. So that whole Ivalice world is really interesting. Vagrant Story is one of the best RPGs ever made. Yep. It's a lot of what Dark Souls does is kind of based on it.
I feel like PS1 and Super NES, like that's the most on fire Square's been outside of their Final Fantasy games.
Oh, there's
like you got stuff like Secret of Mana, Parasite Eve, Brave Fencer Musashi, just a lot of solid experimental stuff.
Yeah, I would compare if you've ever seen Parasite Eve, Vagrant Story is very similar. Where Vagrant Story has a weapon. It's built on creating and using weapon and like attributes. Like there's light weapons, dark weapons, water.
I was about to say you forgot the S in weapons. It's about building weapon.
Oh no, I said S. I guess it cut off or something.
He kept driving down the road and made sure there was no zombies around because he didn't have weapons.
It's designed around finding a weakness around enemies and trying to beat them. There's a really good review of the game by this guy called Pokey on YouTube.
Look him up.
If you look up Goggles Off Vagrant Story, you'll see. Yeah, it's probably the best review on the game you can find. It's one of my favorite RPGs ever made, and I even hesitate to call it an RPG. Like, it certainly is, but it's not a conventional one.
Would you say it falls into other genres?
Absolutely. I would say actually it's pretty close to the old Zelda games in that the game is literally you're going into different rooms and trying to beat the enemies there.
Huh.
But it has a few little box puzzles, but for the most part it's a combat game. Vagrant Story is built on combat. The story is also phenomenal. And it's technically set in the Ivalice in the Tactics universe. So
and also I know people really love that PS1 original Tactics as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like people also liked its PSP remake, I believe.
The PSP remake? War of the Lions.
Yeah,
I have it. Yeah.
Would you say you prefer one over the other of those versions?
No, you can play any of them. The original's really good. I would say the Game Boy Advance version is really good too.
Yeah, I played a little bit of that.
War of the Lions is a great remake. Also,
was there one for the DS?
I don't think so. Not for Tactics.
There was Revenant Wings. That's what I'm thinking of. It was a sequel to 12 that was a strategy RPG.
Would that have been it?
What, Revenant Wings?
Revenant Wings? Oh yeah. That's the one.
I'm guessing that was it. I thought there was a Tactics.
That's
I thought there was
the one
also something called
of.
Tactics A2, but maybe that was more of a spin-off.
Yeah,
anyway.
no. Revenant Wings was the one DS. But outside of that, I guess the other spin-offs, I don't know.
Some of the Chocobo Dungeon games I remember pretty fun.
They were fun, but they're not something like people need to check out.
No, they're like there's a reason Chocobo's the main character and not one of the. Okay, I got it. I'll name two spin-offs that I have fond memories of. I don't know, you say it, the Theatrhythm 3DS games.
Oh, you like those?
I like the second one more. The first one I enjoyed, but I didn't like the fact that the controls were touch screen only. I feel like because you have to do parts where you like swipe directions, that was hard to do on the harder difficulties. The sequel was essentially a remake because it included every song like bar one and a bunch of others and more characters and modes, but you could also do everything with buttons and the circle pad, which was a lot more manageable for me. And there's a lot to unlock in it and a lot of good songs to play. So that's a fun one. I'd say skip the original, go straight to Curtain Call because you're missing basically nothing. Also, another one that's just basically a product of its time because of its gimmick, but me and my brother had a lot of fun playing Crystal Chronicles back in the day.
I was worried you were going to say that game.
You don't like it?
That game has a lot of problems. It was a neat idea.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Idea. I don't know if it's worth going back to, but it was such a cool idea at the time. Like, kind of, before we had companion apps and stuff, it was like, no, plug in your GBA.
Oh,
use that for
you know what was a great? You know, what was a great spinoff? We haven't even mentioned it.
What?
And I think it's a better game than its main game. Is
what?
Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core on the PSP.
I have heard good things about that, but I haven't played it.
I think you could. I don't think it's rare.
I have it. I just haven't played it.
Yeah, it's very good.
Okay.
I actually think it's better than the main game. It has kind of like a Kingdom Hearts style.
Oh, then I gotta play it.
Thing to it, but it's not exactly like that. But it does have kind of like that action.
But I do prefer real time action RPG elements more than turn based. So, like I said, my main problem with 15 is that its control scheme is very unorthodox. Comes to attacks, but other than that, I think it's very solid.
I hear you.
And I'm always meant to play. I was worried you were going to say Dirge of Cerberus because that was.
I don't know anybody. I'll be honest with you. I don't know anyone who likes Dirge of Cerberus.
That's what I'm saying. I thought you were going to say I recommend Dirge of Cerberus. And to be fair, I haven't played it, but
dude, I'm a Devil May Cry fan. Why would I recommend Dirge of Cerberus?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and there I do want to say there's another great hilarious review of Dirge of Cerberus there's a guy on YouTube called Klemps.
There's a lot of guys on YouTube.
Yeah, well, I watch a lot of these like video essays on games and PGs.
Oh, okay, so. I watch reviewers, but I need to watch more essay types.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, he's known for more like reviewing the Drakengard games.
That's a crazy series from what I hear.
Oh, I love it. I'm so happy they finally made a good Nier game. Which is funny because Nier was like my favorite game of that year.
The first one was a cult following, but the second one was mainstream.
The first one is straight up one of my favorite Zelda games because it's basically a Zelda game.
Mm.
It's got a very small world.
I'm Twitter friends with the voice of Tupi.
Oh, really?
She used to do a lot of like Newgrounds amateur voice acting back in the day. I had her for some cartoons, and we still say hi occasionally on Twitter and Facebook. She's cool.
Oh man, she must blow up after that game.
I don't know. Have you played Skullgirls?
Yeah.
She's Bloody Marie.
She's Marie?
Yeah, last boss.
Oh, neat.
I think she's...
Wait. No, Marie's not the last boss, is she?
Yeah, she is. The maid...
Oh, okay.
Who plays her. So, I mentioned her. She's obsessed with David Bowie.
Oh, awesome.
Her posts are either about Bowie, JoJo's, or Cats.
That's all good stuff.
Yeah. That's all
I think, we pretty much covered Final Fantasy.
I think we've covered... It's funny how much... It's such a major franchise. There are things we didn't bring up at all. Like, we didn't touch on like the other attempts at movies or TV shows. Like, I've heard nothing but bad things about the anime attempts, like that OVA in Unlimited.
OVA is all right. Unlimited is actually kind of neat. I like it.
Okay, and so if you want to hear my thoughts on Advent Children, go back and listen to Generation episode. I do not like Spirits Within and
Dilly Dally Shilly Shally.
That's pretty stupid, though. Kingslave was pretty meh, too. We actually did a review of it in our episode where we talked about 15. It looked gorgeous, though, and there was some good parts. But the only one I'd legit recommend is Advent Children. And even then, there's a barrier of entry, because if you...
I'd recommend Unlimited if you take it as its own thing.
Okay, maybe I'll check it out sometime. But any closing things you want to say about Final Fantasy? Like, so wait, what do you have a single favorite?
It's really between... It's probably 9.
Okay, just 9?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Like it's 9, and then there's 12 and 6 are right behind it. But
all right. Yep. All good choices. I would say mine's always going to be a toss up between 6 and 10. I would also recommend 9, 15, 4, and man, you're going to hate me. 13's worth renting at least. I'm in the minority here, but
yeah, you really are.
Oh, okay. You know what?
I would say check it out later after you've gotten an introduction to the series, and
rent
then
it or buy it for like $5 on eBay.
Don't make it your first Final Fantasy.
No, it's very different. I would say that for 15 as well, because it's a very different thing. Also, I would also, if you like MMOs, check out 14 Realm Reborn. You'll get a lot of bang for your buck.
Yeah, 14's pretty good from what I hear.
For the kind of game it is, it's very good. So I want to thank you, Mark. You have given us a ton of material to work with. I think we've clocked in at about 3 hours of recording almost.
Good time.
This is certainly one we'll be splitting up in 2. We'll probably save the Final Fantasy talk for one half and everything else we talked for another. So thanks again for accepting the offer to be on. It was great to have you discuss these things.
Thank you for having me.
And again, since we'll be split in 2 halves, where can people find you and like your projects, like the tournaments you're talking about online?
Well, I help host tournaments at Arcade Odyssey. So there's a Facebook page, but really, if you want to watch the streams, it's every other Tuesdays and Thursdays at Twitch. If you look up Arcade Odyssey Twitch, it'll be like the first thing that pops up on Google. I'm sure it's twitch.tv/Arcade Odyssey. Mm-hmm. If you want to look me up, I'm generally on Twitter. That'd be Dank in Effect.
not N.
Yeah, Dank in Effect.
Yeah.
IN. Yeah. So that's where you'll find me. Be prepared to be disappointed. I mostly just shitpost.
And what's your avatar on it right now? Is it?
It's a close-up picture of professional wrestler Curtis Axel.
Yep. I was mixing up with your Discord avatar, which is the that developer who always wears the mask.
Oh, it's Yoko Taro.
Is that the guy from Nier?
Yep. He created Drakengard. He created Nier.
Yep. Someone dear to your heart.
He's the Moon Man. He is near and dear to my heart. So.
I see what you did there. Myself, you can find me on Twitter, Tumblr, and YouTube, and a lot of other sites under Behonkiss, BEHONKISS. You can also find pages for the show itself on Twitter and Facebook under Sketchwatch Play. If you prefer to use YouTube, I generally upload the audio for each episode to my account after uploading it on our main feed. Also, I guess it'll be a little old by the time this video came out. I just put up a video the other day. I, on a whim, decided to do a video, not a review of the game, but a video dissecting the amazingly stupid plot to Sonic Forces.
Oh man, I gotta watch that then.
Oh, I'll send you a link when we're done. I'll admit, another controversial opinion, I thought the game itself was pretty fun, but the writing, even for a Sonic game, was a total disaster in ways I could not have expected.
I can't defend it because I love Generations.
Generations is one of my favorite. Generations is great.
Yeah, but this is technically the spiritual successor to Generations.
There's a lot of differences there. If just because people love Generations doesn't mean you'll love Forces.
No, it doesn't.
Their attempt to do a more fleshed out story has blown up in their face from this game. Anyway, I can't say just yet who we're going to have for our next episode. I've actually got 2 possibilities up in the air right now, and I'd recommend people stay tuned to the Twitter and Facebook. And there's also a good possibility that we'll have announced it by the time this half of the episode is out, because when we're recording this, I need to finish editing the second half of our X-Men episode. That's a delay because I was busy with that and some other projects, like I got hired to work on art for a phone game and an animation collab. You'll hopefully hear more about those in the future. But again, thanks so much, Mark, for a really meaty episode. I think people from a lot of different fandoms will find a lot to enjoy here. Any closing statements you have for the audience?
No, I had a good time. If you'd like to have me on again, don't hesitate to hit me up.
All right. I also, again, I've said this with Felipe and Tyler, but I always mean it. Listen to Generation Animation.
I really should plug my own podcast.
Yes.
fanoffmedia.com.
Yeah.
You can find us there.
Twitter, Gen Animation.
Twitter. Our Twitter is Gen Animation. I think our Tumblr is also Gen Animation.
I believe it is. And
Felipe does not like bringing up Tumblr.
And you can also find the show audio on iTunes and other podcast feed directories such as that.
Yes, we are available on iTunes. You can also, you can download us straight from Fanoff Media.
Yeah, and podcast apps like I use.
And if you do listen, don't hesitate to recommend something on the list or send us a tweet. And
either tweet them
put it on the list.
Join their Discord server. I think that's where the list has migrated. Or also there's a topic on the Fanoff Media website because the forums have been kind of left behind after a redesign.
Yep. I think there's a Discord link on our Facebook page.
Yeah, check it out on Facebook as well.
Yeah, just look up Generation Animation. We're right there. So that's.
What a journey this episode has been. We've talked about Coco, Fox buyouts, Alita, James Cameron, Final Fantasy,
Hollywood.
Phineas and Ferb somehow.
Yeah.
Earthworm Jim for like 10 seconds. Bubsy.
Mario.
Yeah. How do we get to talking about Bubsy, talking about Final Fantasy? Leave it to Mark.
Bubsy's a big deal in my household.
What's with his puns?
Okay, so before I leave, I want to leave a little tidbit about Bubsy 3D.
Go for it.
Right? So I remember this distinctly, and I looked it up and I found out it was true. So I rented Bubsy, I remember. On the case, there's some like fake award thing.
The Gold X Award.
Yeah, the Gold X Award for like most anticipated game of the year. So here's the thing. That's really on the case.
Mm-hmm.
And no one has any idea what it is.
Oh, I thought they said it was from some magazine. But I prefer...
No.
Oh.
No, I looked up... I did the research. I looked up the magazine. I looked up where it might have been. It might not exist. They might have just made it up.
The marketers were trying so hard to convince people it was a good game.
Yep, so I put it on the case, and they made up some award that never has existed, and they were like, here, play Bubsy.
And that's Bubsy's legacy.
Yep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, folks.